Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Dragon Family. This is Study Time with Falak, and today we are going to continue our Through the Looking Glass by Lewis Carroll, Chapter 3, Looking Glass Insects. So the story continues as Alice was going to travel the country she was in currently. As she roams around, she found out that elephants were making honey from the flowers. Now, this is something you only find in the mirror world. Like, elephants here are playing the role of honeybees. The idea stuck to Alice as how enormous the flowers must be for the elephants to make honey from them. She went on checking herself just as she was beginning to run down the hill. I think I'll go down the other way and perhaps I may visit the elephants later on. Besides, I do so want to get into the third square. So, with this excuse, she ran down the hill and jumped over the first of the six little brooks, and suddenly she was sitting in a carriage. The guard asked Alice to show him her traveling ticket, but to Alice's surprise, she didn't have one. She noticed that everyone in the carriage had a ticket except her. She, in a frightened tone, told the guard that she couldn't buy one as she never saw a ticket counter. To this, the guard replied that she must have bought one from the engine driver. Then he started to examine Alice, first with a telescope, then a microscope, and at last with an opera glass. Like just what the guard was thinking, examining her with a telescope, a microscope, and at last with an opera glass. It is a ticket, not a diamond. How hard it could be. At last, he said, "You're traveling in the wrong way," and shut up the window and went away. Opposite to her was sitting a gentleman who was dressed in white paper, a goat who was sitting next to him. There was a beetle sitting next to the goat. Each of them started commenting on Alice one after one in an order. There was also someone else beside the beetle, but Alice couldn't see the face. But the voice was so hoarse, so Alice just guessed it to be a horse. Right there, a voice was whispering in her ear, "You should make a joke, horse, horse." But Alice ignored it. There was also an extremely small voice whispering in Alice's ears, as I said earlier, but she couldn't see it. So you can imagine how the carriage was. It was a train actually, train carriage. So you can just imagine just how filled up it was, like a paper man, a man dressed in paper, then a goat, then a beetle, then some invisible voice only she could hear, not see. And after that, other voices went on saying she must go by the post as she's got a head on her head. She's got a head on her, huh? It's hilarious. She must be seen as a message by the telegraph. She must draw the train herself the rest of the way, and so on. So this was a rule in the looking glass, like if we are sitting all together we have to speak in turns, like the paperman first said something, then it's turn for the goat and then the beetle and then the someone who is invisible almost. But the gentleman who was dressed in white paper leaned forward and whispered in her ear to not mind anyone and also advises her to buy a return ticket. To which Alice was chatting with the insect which was whispering to her ears until a shrill came from the engine. Everyone jumped up in alarm. In one moment, Alice was sitting in the train, and on the other, she found herself sitting quietly under a tree, while the gnat with whom she was talking all along the journey was balancing itself on a twig just over her head. So now the mysterious voice was a gnat. Gnat is an insect. You may have saw the picture in the starting. I put the picture of the gnat actually. So yeah, mind it. The gnat, who was so small that Alice couldn't see, was now a size of a chicken. Now, if some insects like that whispers in my ear at first and then it transforms into a size of a chicken, it's a given that I will be shocked. The Gnat then inquires Alice some questions and the both of them walks together in the woods. So the questions were like which insects Alice likes, or if she likes the gnat now or not, if she liked it previously or not, and etc. etc. These were all the questions. As the two continues their journey, Alice and the gnat encounters a number of insects, and the gnat also jokes about what would have happened if Alice didn't have a name. She very soon came to an open field with a wood on the other side of it. It looked much darker than the last wood, and Alice felt a little timid about going into it. However, on second thoughts, she made up her mind to go on as this was the only way to go to the 8 square. As Alice was rambling on in this way, when she reached the wood, it looked very cool and shady, as she was talking to herself about how comfortable it is after being so hot to get into the tree. But to her surprise, she couldn't remember what it is called under which she was standing. So, here, when I put the tree, she couldn't remember the word tree. I just put it there for so that you guys can understand what is that Alice couldn't remember. It's the tree that she couldn't remember. So she couldn't remember what under which she was standing, the cool and shady thing. What was it? For some moments she paused. Then she tried to remember her name, but all she could remember was that her name starts with L. Now, this was not correct because Alice's name starts with A, but because she couldn't remember her name very well, all she could remember was L. So, yeah, if you pronounce Alice, some word L comes in the first. L. Alice. So, L was the only thing she could remember for her name. Just then, a fawn came wandering by. It looked at Alice with its large, gentle eyes, but didn't seem at all frightened. It only started back a little and then stood looking at her again. Then the fawn asked Alice about her name, but poor Alice couldn't remember her name and asked the fawn about its name. To her great surprise, the fawn also couldn't remember its name, and Alice and to come with it a little further and asks her to come with it a little further as it couldn't remember it in that place. So this line describes that the forest in which Alice was right now, it has some kind of magic or something which just it just happens to them to forget when they are standing inside that forest, when they are under that forest, they somehow forget their name more precisely. So as they walked on together through the wood, Alice with her arms clasped lovingly round the soft neck of the fawn till they came out into another open field, and here the fawn gave a sudden bound into the air and shook itself free from Alice's arms. I am a fawn, it cried out in a voice of delight. And dear me, you're a human child. A sudden look of alarm came into its beautiful brown eyes, and in another moment it had darted away at full speed. Now Alice stood looking at it, almost ready to cry at having lost her dear little fellow traveler so suddenly. However, she also remembered her name and told herself that she will never forget her name again. Now she is acting like she just meant to forget her name previously. Now the question that occurred to Alice was which finger post she ought to follow. It was not a very difficult question to answer, as there was only one road through the wood, and the two finger posts both pointed along it. She thought that she will settle it when the road divides, and they point different ways. But this did not seem likely to happen. She went on and on a long way, and wherever the road divided, there were sure to be two finger posts pointing the same way. One marked to Tweedledum's house and the other to the house of Tweedledee. She was rather confused, a little, as she thought that they lived in the same house. But then she remembered that she couldn't stay there for longer. So she decided that she would greet them and ask them the way out. So she wandered on, talking to herself as she went, till on turning a sharp corner, she came upon two fat little men, so suddenly that she could not help staring back. But in another moment she recovered herself, feeling sure that they must be. Now, who must they be? This is a cliffhanger for sure. Tell me in the comment section down below who were those fat little men Alice encountered. So that's all for today. Hope you liked it and enjoyed it. Comment in the comment section down below to tell me what you liked about it and what you hated about it. If you are new to this channel, subscribe it, and if you are not new to this channel, like it and share it with your friends and families. And if you are a gamer, don't forget to follow our little Hamza who is currently playing Wahala. So that's all for today. Thank you for listening and time out.